Hey everyone. Wanted to let you know that this week on Dynaway Dialogues, we had Nancy Regan, reliability centered maintenance expert, um, on the podcast, and we were excited to hear from her about her experiences working with customers with RCM and how that's impacted those customers. She's going to be at the conference, and we're excited to hear her speak. Hopefully, we'll see you there, and thanks for joining. Hello, welcome to another edition of Dynaway Dialogues. I'm your host, Jesse Zadanek. I'm super excited today to have Nancy Regan here with us. She's a reliability and reliability centered maintenance expert, RCM, and she has over 26 years of experience facilitating with customers RCM, her RCM experience, and helping them do a better job with maintenance and reliability. And welcome, Nancy. Good to have you today.
Thank you, Jesse. Great to be here.
Yeah. Well, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do it and how you work with customers.
So as you mentioned, my core focus is reliability-centered maintenance. And I kind of fell into reliability-centered maintenance the way I suspect a lot of people out there have fallen into their careers. When I was in high school, I was convinced that I wanted to be an Egyptologist. And then I realized that I would need to live in Egypt and I would miss my family too much. So I had to choose something different. And
Right.
quite honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my father worked for Eastern Airlines when I was young, and he cleaned planes, but his badge gave us access to the aircraft ramp. So, in those days, security wasn't what it is today. So he would just
Right.
flash his badge and we would breeze through security, and he'd take me down onto the ramp and put me in the seat of like aircraft tow tractors. And it was really exciting to me. And I just kind of fell in love with aviation. So I knew I loved airplanes, and I knew I wanted to live in Florida. I grew up in Boston, which I didn't like. The winter's way too cold. And there was just
Right.
something about Florida. And when I was in high school, this magazine fell on my, or was placed on my desk in homeroom from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And it had like the cockpit of a plane, and it was at night. You could see the stars, and it was really cool. And so I thought, that's where I want to go. And so I was looking through the course catalog, and the courses for aerospace engineering sounded really cool. And that's how I chose engineering. That's no joke. The courses were really cool, but it was really hard, but I got through it. And then kind of the universe stepped in again. I was a senior in college, and the Naval Air Systems Command came and interviewed at our school for the position of an internship. And so I interviewed and I got the job. So right out of college, I started traveling, and I did several rotations around the country, and I ended up at the Naval Air Warfare Center in Lakehurst, New Jersey. Now, if you or if any listener out there has ever been an intern, you may know that you don't always get the most interesting work. Truth be told, I was painfully bored, and I'm not that kind of a person. I need to be busy. So
Right.
one day my phone rings, and it's my supervisor, Fred, and he called me into his office. And so, I brought my notebook and I sit down, and he says, Nancy, we've been tasked from above to reduce maintenance and improve reliability. And we've been tasked to do reliability-centered maintenance. So I have my notebook and I write down reliability-centered. What did he say? I think he said maintenance. So reliability-centered maintenance. He said, I need you to go figure out what that is and how we can implement it here at Navy Lakehurst. Now, I suspect that Fred was just kind of pushing this task off to an intern who probably wouldn't do anything with it, but I just ran with it. So, little did I know that on that very ordinary day in August 1997, that small meet, that 10-minute meeting would set the trajectory for my life. So that's how I learned RCM within the Navy, and my very first RCM analysis was on an aircraft tow tractor, and it's like it brings me back to I can remember my father hoisting me up and sitting me in the seat.
Uh-huh.
So, that's how I started. And I did a lot of work with the Navy and learned a lot, and then wanted to do RCM on more diverse equipment. So I left the Navy and started my own business. And that's how I got into reliability centered maintenance, which has become and will forever remain the technical love of my life.
Gotcha. Wow, that's fascinating. That's wonderful. It's funny how our career trajectories can be changed by the smallest things sometimes. I have a similar story I'll tell some other time. Yeah, but I want to talk about you. So uh, now your company, you do RCM courses and trainings, and tell us a little bit about kind of that aspect of your business.
Yeah, I focus primarily on reliability centered maintenance. And so I provide training from an introductory level all the way up to, RCM facilitators and mentoring them. And because what I really think is important is, I can do contract facilitation for a company, come in and they pay me to facilitate analyses, and that can be effective. But it's even better when an organization trains their own people. And so they become self-sufficient. And so that's what I love doing the most, is training other people and then leaving them, with a fully trained team, and they can just, take RCM and run with it.
I'm curious about that. What do you see over your years of experience is is it a certain personality type or title that will sort of gravitate towards that, grab it, and run with it like you did?
So do you mean like the RCM champion?
Yeah,
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 yeah, you
yeah.
need to. I mean, yeah, definitely. I think the number one thing would be feeling passionate about something. So
Okay.
when I learned what RCM was, and then as I facilitated and saw the good that it can do, I became really passionate about it. So I think that primarily that's the most important thing, is that for the type of person who can get excited about something and kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I latched on and I didn't let go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's probably the number one thing about a person. And then of course, you have to love machines and,
Yeah.
love reliability. I think that's the most important thing. But an organization definitely needs a champion, either one person or a small team.
Yeah.
Because you got to grab so many other people and disciplines within an organization to make it work. And that goes for anything, not just reliability centered maintenance.
Yeah. It's very true with in our industry as well. In our software business, that if you don't have a champion there to kind of learn and be an advocate, then the company will flounder in implementing the software. So it's the same concept. Now, I want to ask you about technology versus just kind of the basics of RCM. How do you balance that? What's the best way for an organization to kind of move forward?
Okay, so the best way to move forward with reliability centered maintenance is to start off small.
Hmm.
One of the biggest misconceptions about the process is that you have to, if you're going to do RCM, you have to do it on everything. And that is a big misconception. I know that that's not true, just because of my experience, but also when you think about some organizations, they have like tens of thousands of assets. And, nobody has that kind of time, money, and other resources to commit. So I think it's important to focus and implement RCM where it's needed the most, and you don't need some formal analysis, criticality analysis to figure out what you're going to do RCM on. I mean, just sit down and be quiet for a second and think, what's causing me the most pain? What equipment
Right.
has chronic downtime or is costing me the most? And start there. And the other thing is, the other part about starting off small is you don't have to decide to start an RCM program. Just do 1, 2, or 3 pilot projects. That way
Hmm.
you can see what RCM takes, what you can get from it, and then you can decide from there if you want to go forward. And, really that's true of most things in life, and
Hmm.
really, most reliability processes. So that's what I would recommend. Now, you mentioned the word basics. So if you don't mind if I just say one more thing about this,
Sure.
is that, one of the big things that a big mistake or misconception, I would say mistake, that I see a lot in the maintenance and reliability field right now is that organizations are focusing on the complex, and it's at the expense of really understanding the basics. For example, technology is very quickly advancing. We have some very advanced condition monitoring equipment. Now we're hearing about artificial intelligence and how that can be a solution. And then there are some really technologically advanced software programs. And all of those things are necessary in our industry. But when reliability teams don't understand the basics of maintenance and reliability, then it's kind of like, hey, let's buy this and maybe this will solve this reliability problem. So they don't really understand, what are they managing? Are they managing it properly? Is the return on investment there? So having a firm foundation in the basics of maintenance and reliability is absolutely critical. And the basics are jam-packed in the RCM process.
Right. Kind of throwing ideas at something without understanding it first. Maybe you hit it, maybe you don't, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's insightful. Thanks for sharing that. So how important is leadership in the whole RCM application? What's the role of leadership, and what types of leadership in organizations have you seen be successful?
Okay. The best leaders are those that, number one, take the time to understand the basics and understand whether it's reliability centered maintenance or any other reliability improvement process, to understand it and then listen to the equipment experts. So I'll liken it to reliability centered maintenance, but what I'm saying goes for pretty much anything. I've facilitated some really successful RCM analyses that became full-blown RCM programs. The program that I started when I was a civilian employee of the Navy, like I mentioned, that RCM program 26 years later is still going strong. And it is because leadership decided to understand it. And when you understand something, when you know better, you do better. So they understood the value. They understood the time and resources it was going to take to, train other people to get it done. So they understood that, and then they listened to the people who know the equipment best. And the way we do that in RCM is I advocate a facilitated working group approach to reliability centered maintenance. That is, the facilitator is the person who understands RCM, but the maintainer, the operator, the engineer, maybe an electrician, maybe a logistician, depending upon what you're analyzing, would determine what kind of disciplines you have in the room. So the facilitator asks the questions and the equipment experts give the answers. Now, what's really important about that is an operator knows a piece of equipment differently than a maintainer, than an engineer, than a maintenance planner. Everyone understands it differently and knows something about it that the other doesn't know. So not only do you get well-rounded answers for the RCM questions, but in my experience, sometimes the biggest success story from an RCM analysis is because now people understand their equipment and they start to work with each other. So, oftentimes like operators and maintainers butt heads in our world. Right. But really, they both want the same thing. The maintainer wants the time to proactively take care of this machine. He or she is tired of fighting fires. And the operator just wants to be able to do his or her job and, wants the machine to be ready when they need it. So they want the same thing. It's just that their perspective is different. So when they start to understand each other, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like this light is suddenly cast on things. So it's an incredible thing to see and be a part of it, because our equipment experts, they love their equipment, they love what they do, they care about what they do, but too often leadership doesn't listen to them. I remember one time in an RCM analysis, I had an operator, and he was just he just, you could tell from his body language that he was withdrawn, and he didn't look angry. He just kind of looked sad, kind of sullen, and I worked hard to get him, try and get him involved. And finally he just said, I just feel like this is a waste of time, because no one ever listens to what I have to say anyway, and this is going to be the same thing. So, I shared with him that a lot of time and a lot of money is going into this, and I could assure him that I would make sure that his voice was heard. But the thing is it didn't even matter whether I made sure or not, because when you do RCM, all of the information you collect is recorded in a formal analysis, and the solutions are recorded formally. So, and then that, needs to go to a validation meeting, and a validation team says, yes, we'll do that, or no, we don't. So if they decide not to do something, there's documentation there. So it's another plus.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a wonderful story. Okay. Let me ask you this, because I'm not as familiar with RCM as obviously, you are in your world, but what's the effective ways to sort of measure the impact of RCM? How do you get better? And what are the analytics that you use?
Okay, so I think the best way is, certainly there are, you can do all kinds of formal analyses after the fact. Usually with RCM, it takes a year or so to be able to collect enough data to see that things are working.
Yeah.
But in the short term, what I think is very important to notice is, number one, if you go in any organization now and say, what's causing you the most pain? They'll say, oh my gosh, that compressor is always going down and it stops production, blah, blah, blah. So if all of a sudden people are happy because that machine is not, failing as frequently, there's an answer. But the other thing I think is also the way you see people start to interact together. And that's where I think the reliability culture comes in, where it's no longer like operations is over here and maintenance is over there, and engineering, they're upstairs. It's kind of like everyone starts to work together. So I think that those two things are really important metrics.
Right. That's fascinating. Yeah, I've seen a lot of situations where operations and maintenance, they sort of butt heads. They're sort of adversarial in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good for anyone. Absolutely. Good. Well, let's shift topics here a little bit. Let me ask you, you're going to be a speaker at Dynaway Connect in a few weeks. We're excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to share, and what your talk is going to be about.
Okay, so as I started to do reliability-centered maintenance, 10 and 15 and 20 years later, I realized that we have way more in common with our machines than we may realize. Where machines suffer from failure modes, oil degrades and
Right.
dirt accumulates, etc. But we as human beings, a compressor has a primary function, right? It needs to do a certain thing in a plant. But as human beings, we have a primary function. Some people may call it a purpose or a desire or a mission, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But we wake up every day, to do something. And when it's something, when we have, maybe like a big goal or a lofty goal, we start to hear these voices, who are you to want to do that? And you better not tell anyone that. They're going to think you're nuts. And then you start thinking about how you might get something done. And then the biggest human failure mode of all, in my experience anyway, is fear. And so, during my career, I had a lot of bouts where And I know I'm not completely alone, because other people have told me, wow, I've felt the same thing. But it's kind of like, especially with fear, it's designed to stop you in your in your tracks. And sometimes it feels like, it's kind of just suffocating you, and you might want to just give up. So I've been, I've been so fortunate in my life to have some really incredible mentors, and one in particular, and she just recently passed away. Her name is Christina, and she taught me how to manage a lot of these things, like the voices and the fear and overwhelm. And so she gave me some really cool techniques. And at the keynote, at the keynote later this month, I'm going to share some of them, but most especially the one about fear, and how to manage it, because you can't get rid of it, but it's very manageable. And it just kind of helps you to clear all that stuff so you can move forward and get done what you want to get done.
That's fantastic. We all struggle with that, so I can't wait. That's going to be a great talk. Well, last question then, Nancy. I just want to get your take. Dynaway is hosting this asset management conference. It's kind of our first attempt at it. We've never done it before, but we're super excited. But what's your take on this type of event overall in your career? Have you learned things? Have they been useful? On the opposite side, are they a waste of time? How has it impacted you personally, and how have you seen other organizations leverage them?
No, I love events like this, and for two primary reasons. I mean, obviously, number one, you're definitely going to learn something. And I liken a conference to a book. One of my mentors said that when you read a book, if you can just get one thing, one idea, or one piece of knowledge that can move you forward, then the whole book was worth it. You don't have to get 1,000 ideas from one book. And a conference is the same way, because sometimes you have to hear something a certain way or in a certain voice, and it can really kind of jumpstart you. So I love it for that reason. And the other thing is also, we talk about networking, and networking is very important. But a piece of networking for me is when I hear people who are struggling with something. It may be the same thing I'm struggling with, and then it makes me feel less stupid. It makes me not feel so not capable. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, someone else is having that struggle. So,
Right.
let's put our heads together. Let's talk about it. And that's another reason why I really like events like this. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to present what I'm going to present, because it's a conference about physical assets, but people take care of physical assets. And when we are not running at our best, how can we give the best to our machines? Right.
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm really excited to have a part of the human element involved.
Well, we're excited to hear. I can't wait to meet you in person. We've only met virtually here, but I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see you there. So I think that's going to wrap us up for Dynaway Dialogues this week. Thanks for joining, Nancy. Please, if you're watching us out there, like, follow, whatever platform you're on, give us a little boost, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, everyone.